Thank you, Fields. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We appreciate everyone taking the time to participate in these now weekly press conferences that we're doing. I think, as everyone knows, tabulation is already underway, and it's going along very well. And as the days go on, we're going to have more and more opportunities for people to vote in person as we open up more vote centers. And I'm really proud of the work of this team so far. They're doing an incredible job under an immense amount of scrutiny, and all of the members of the Board of Supervisors, and of course I know Recorder Richer, are very grateful for the work that they're doing. Did want to address something that Fields mentioned just briefly. We did have our external network for the county was off for about 45 minutes. So like, you know, when you're at your job and the network goes down, it impacts, maybe stops you from doing the work that you're doing. That's exactly what we did here. We stopped the tabulation because with that external network down, then we couldn't live stream anymore. And of course, that's vitally important that that live stream is going on at all times. And once we were able to get the live stream cameras back up, then we're able to continue with the tabulation. Again, this is a big team effort. It's everyone here in Maricopa County Elections, the Recorder's Office, but it's also, as you know, thousands of your neighbors, family members, friends who come down here, and they're part of the process here. And it's also the political parties. We know that the political parties are a key piece of this, and certainly part of the checks and balances that are in this system. Obviously, there's been a lot of coverage in the past few days about people. There's a lot of diversions out there, a lot of distractions going on in the community. And I want everyone to be very clear that at Maricopa County, we are focused on this. Our entire team is focused on it. We're not going to be distracted from doing our jobs. And more importantly, we're not going to be distracted from protecting every single citizen's right to vote in this election. So I want people to know that however it is that they choose to vote, if they want to vote by dropping off their envelope in a drop box, we're going to protect that. If they want to do it by mail, we'll protect that. Or if they want to vote in person, either before Election Day or on Election Day, we will absolutely be defending that. And I also wanted to acknowledge, first of all, Eddie Cook, our county assessor, is in here, and one of my colleagues on the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, Tom Galvin, who represents District 2. Tom, thank you for your hard work on behalf of your district and all of Maricopa County. And with that, I'll turn it back to Fields.
All right, thank you, Chairman Gates. Well, Co-Director of Elections, Scott Jarrett, is here to talk a little bit more about everything we outlined earlier. So, Scott, take it away.
Thank you, Fields. Good afternoon. So I'll be starting my presentation with some information about where we are in the election cycle, as well as providing some statistics on voter participation so far throughout the election cycle. So we just crossed over the midway point in the midterms elections. So what that means for voters is they have 13 days to be able to return that early ballot to us if they have not returned it, or if they want to vote in person at any one of our voting locations to be able to have that ballot counted in the midterm elections. So as of yesterday, we've had 1.9 million voters request an early ballot. Of that, we've had 359,721 voters return that ballot. They've returned that through 3 different modes, either by mail. There's 336,634, or 93% of voters have returned their ballot by mail. By drop box, we've had nearly 20,000. That's 19,619, or 6%. Our voters that have voted in person, that's 3,468, or 1%. So all those early ballots must go through a validation process. So in Maricopa County and in the elections world, that means they go through a signature verification process to verify that they can be counted and validated. So after they go through that signature verification process, they will then be sent to our bipartisan processing teams to separate that ballot from the affidavit envelope, creating that secret ballot, and then sending it on to tabulation. So as the chairman mentioned, we have started our tabulation earlier in the week. That was on Monday. So far we have 53,187 ballots ready to be reported in that first post on election night at 8 p.m. So now turning to how voters can participate in the midterm elections. So we in Maricopa County provide a wide array of options for voters to be able to participate, whether that's by mail, taking their ballot and dropping it off in any U.S. post office box, those blue boxes that are out there throughout the county, returning that to any one of our voting locations. So that's vote centers as well as standalone drop boxes. Also participating at any one of our vote centers. So we do have a few key deadlines coming up very soon. So this Friday, October 28th at 5 p.m., that's the last day that a voter can request a ballot by mail. Also on that same day, October 28th, we'll be opening our next phase of vote centers. So we'll be adding 44 new vote centers. So we'll have a total of 56 voting locations available for voters, plus the 13 standalone drop boxes for voters. We'll then have another phase that opens. This is going to be November 7th. It's our third phase. We'll have 128 vote centers open at that point in time, as well as then 12 standalone drop boxes. And then on election day, we'll have a total of 223 vote centers available for voters, along with those 12 standalone drop boxes as well. And now I'll be turning over to some of what Fields mentioned in our agenda, is talking about some key timelines related to tabulation and election results, and I'll be answering just some common questions that we get about that. So the first question is, what will be included in the 8 p.m. results on election night? And we are planning to include all of those ballots that have been returned to us by Saturday, that's November 5th, so 3 days before the election. Now, there's a key point here that we have in hand at the election center on that Saturday, November 5th. So if you're returning or mailing that ballot back to us, the post office recommends that that be returned to us on November 1st for us to be able to have it by election day. So if you want it in those results by those first results posted at 8 p.m. on election night, you might want to send that back to us a few days before November 1st. But if you're voting in person or dropping that ballot off that Saturday, November 5th, we should be able to have that in those results at 8 p.m. on election night. The next question we get a lot is, when will you be done reporting on election night, and how frequently will you be posting those results? And as our bipartisan poll workers are returning those ballots to us on election night, as well as those encrypted memory cards, we'll be reporting those results throughout the entire night. We estimate that it'll be anywhere from every hour to 90 minutes, but those are estimations as those poll workers are coming in. They'll need to return those directly either to the elections department if they're close by locations. If they're in our more remote locations throughout the valley, they'll be going to secure receiving sites. We partner with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office to have deputies at those sites, as well as we'll have bipartisan teams checking the chain of custody. So to make sure that we can transmit those results securely from our voting locations and do it reliably and accurately, it can take time. So looking back at historical, so similar like elections, 2018 general election, 2020 general election, it was about 2 a.m. in that next day, Wednesday morning, that we posted results. I think that'd be a good estimate for this election as well. So 2 a.m. that next day, when we'll have that final post on election night. So the next question is, when will we be done counting all ballots? So we're estimating that it will take us about 10 to 12 days to post those final results. And why? And one of the reasons is because in Arizona, many voters, and it's a very popular mode of voting, is to actually return that early ballot on election day. In the August primary, we had 15% of our voters return that ballot on election day. And it takes time to go through that signature verification process, to go then through those early ballot processing boards to separate and create that affidavit envelope and that ballot to create that secret ballot, and then to send that on to our tabulation team to get those results posted. So we're estimating that we'll have between 98 and 99% of ballots reported by that Friday after Election Day, 72 hours. So that happens to be Veterans Day. So we will be working on Veterans Day to ensure that we're able to keep those ballots flowing and those results being posted. So we are anticipating also that we'll take then that full 10 to 12 days to be able to post those final results. One of the other reasons is because there's the statutory cure deadline. So this year, in statute, it provides 5 business days because of that Veterans holiday. that creates actually 8 calendar days for voters to be able to cure their question signature, or if they showed up at a voting location and had a conditional provisional, they didn't show the right type of ID. So the last question I'll be answering is, how will voters know how many ballots are left to count and when we'll be posting results through those days after Election Day? And so with all of our results, we'll be issuing a press release, and they'll provide an estimate of how many ballots we have left to count, as well as what were those ballots that were included in that post. And then it will also show when our next post will be, and we'll provide it, and that'll be a daily post that we provide that press release. So the last item I'll be talking about is the automatic recount. And so in the last legislative session, this was Senate Bill 1008, and it increased the likelihood that automatic recounts would happen. Not only that they'll happen on a single contest, but could be many contests on the same ballot. And essentially what this has taken is a small number of the variance between the top 2 candidates in a contest would trigger to a large number. So for example, in a statewide contest, and it's pretty reasonable to expect that we could have 3 million ballots voted in a statewide contest. Prior to this law, that would have been 200 ballots or less would have triggered that automatic recount. Now, with this new state law, it could be upwards of 15,000 ballots separating those 2 top candidates, or the yes, no in a proposition. That would trigger a automatic recount. So we went back and looked at 2020, and we identified that there would have been 5 contests on the ballot in 2020 that would have triggered an automatic recount if this law had been in effect in 2020. So a couple key pieces of information. So this is automatic, so it can't be asked for by the candidate or someone else, but it does require the filing officer to go to court and have the court initiate the automatic recount. So, depending on the contest, it is the it's a Secretary of State would be the filing officer. If it's a statewide contest, if it is a federal contest or a legislative contest. If it's a local contest, then that would be the Elections Department would need to go to court and get that filing officer. Another key piece of information is during the recount process, there are no posts, daily posts. So similar to what we would be for the November 2022 general election, after Election Day, we're posting daily. So that will not be happening during the recount. If there is a recount, those results are sealed, and then they go to the judge to open those and unseal them in court. So the last thing I wanted to highlight is just the calendar that we're looking at. So right now, because it's the filing officer that will initiate that recount, it happens after the canvass. So we're looking at the Secretary of State's canvass, so that's December 5th. And then they will look to go immediately to court, hopefully that same day. Then the Secretary of State needs to go through and do a logic and accuracy test. So this is at all the different counties. So similar to what they did for this general election, they'll need to visit all 15 counties to do that logic and accuracy test. We're anticipating that could take a few different days for them to be able to get out to all those counties, somewhere between December 6th and December 13th. And then in Maricopa County, we're anticipating our recount, the hand count of the recount, and then going to court for the filing to take somewhere between December 7th and December 30th. So that's the timeline. So in state statute, if you have a recount, and if it's for a federal office, a statewide office, or a legislative office, it also requires a hand count to be performed of those contests. And it's an expanded hand count, a higher percentage. That's correct. It's 2% of the ballots that are included in the races that are being recounted. If they fall within the recount statute, this new statute.
Can you tell us which 5 elections last time around? Can you tell us which 5 elections last time around would have been affected by this new law?
So it was the presidential contest, it was the county recorder contest, it was the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors District 1, and then there was Senate. I don't have There's one legislative district contest is in the Senate, state Senate, and then I believe it's the corporation commissioner. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Fields.
So I know there were a lot of numbers there. I think let's not miss the number that 99% of the ballots will be counted by the Friday after Election Day. And then obviously Scott talked a lot about the cleanup efforts and everything that has to take place by statute in order to get all the ballots counted. And this is a conversation we've had a number of times, and Recorder Richard might want to touch on this, but that the media might choose to call contests, and that's part of their prerogative. But certainly here at at Maricopa County and at the Elections Department and the Recorder's Office, this is about counting every single legitimate ballot that is filed in this election. So that's what will be going on here at the Elections Department. Recorder Richard.
All right. I'm Stephen Richer, Maricopa County Recorder. Bram, I already promised the team you would bring eggnog on December 25th to the team, so we'll see you there. I think that I am supposed to, it's incumbent upon me to admonish you all that today is October 26th, as I have been posting. And if you get your ballot back to us today, it will be part of the 8 p.m. results on election night. So that's just putting a finer point on what Scott said. But really, again, lots of people ask, why don't you have all the election results on election night? Well, it really goes to those early ballot drop-offs on Election Day, and that's because we can't even start to retrieve those until all voters are outside of the voting location. So polls close at 7 p.m. Yes, polls close at 7 p.m., but that doesn't mean that everyone's done voting at 7 p.m., because if there's anything of a line, then maybe you don't even get your ballot until 7:20, and then heavens knows this ballot has like 75 contests plus, including 10 propositions, so some people are going to be taking 30, 35 minutes to fill out this ballot, which means we don't kick you out of there until, we never kick you out of there, but you might not leave until 8:15, which means we're not starting to retrieve the memory drives and the early ballot drop-offs until 8:15, which means we're not starting to do the imaging, which is the first step of the scanning that barcode to make sure it's to a registered voter, make sure that that voter only has one vote associated with it, and then we can begin the signature verification process. I promise you that everyone who's on this team will be working their butts off every single day, and including on Election Day and through Election Day. We know everyone would like results faster. If you want to help us out with that, well, then get your ballot back to us now. I mentioned to Kyung before we came over here that communicating the process is every bit as important now as administering the contest elections. And maybe that's not exactly true, but administering the election is paramount, but communicating about it is very important as well. So I've been trying to do everything I can to personally answer as many questions as possible, and so too has our team. So I'm going to give you a few statistics on that. And what's fascinating to me is we have actually received roughly the same number of calls and emails. So in the month of October, we have received 27,000 calls related to elections to our STAR call center. Now, I mentioned 2 weeks ago that the average call pickup time was 1 minute. That has increased to 2 minutes, but we are resolving 70% of calls within 30 seconds, which is something that we're very proud of. Eddie, John, the treasurer, and I were down at the Star Center today, and the team is firing on all gears there, and we're really proud of the work that they've done. We've hired 50 temporary workers to staff our calls for voter calls, and so we think that that's going well, and we think that's even in better position than it was for the August primary. Regarding emails, like I said, we've received about 27,000 emails since the election began relating to election administration. We are responding to emails sent during the work hours within an hour to almost every single email, and that's something that I'm definitely proud of. We talk a lot about sort of the external environment in elections, but what we should be focused on are the things that we can control, and this is something that we can control, and it's something that I'm incredibly proud of from a customer service standpoint, that we're turning an average email in under an hour. What are people asking about? Lots of people wanted to know, I want my ballot now. So as soon as they went out, ballots went out on October 12th, people would start emailing on October 13th, and of course, God bless social media, but as soon as somebody else posts that they have their ballot, well, then everyone wants their ballot, and that's exciting, and we're happy for people. We've also received a lot of one-time ballot requests, or I've spilled coffee on my ballot request, and things of that nature. 32% of those emails have been voter registration updates. 30% have just been questions about early voting. 12% have been about voting locations, simply where do I go to vote. 9% have been about the active early voting list, either wanting to move on or wanting to move off. 7% have been just constituent feedback. 3% have been about signature verification, wanting to know what their signature looks like, wanting to know about the process. 2% have been about general questions. And if that doesn't add up to 100%, well, I'm sorry. I think that's all I have to say. And yeah, I appreciate everyone being here as always, because as we said, a lot of people have a lot of questions about elections right now. We welcome that. We're excited by that. There are very positive ways to get involved in the process. One of them is asking questions. Another one's volunteering with your political party. And yes, we are still hiring for a few spots to work elections. So if you're super excited about it, come on down, get involved at maricopa.vote.
All right, thank you, Recorder Richard. Appreciate that. So at this time, we'll open it up for questions. Quick reminder, I see Kyung Law already has her hand up, and then we'll go to Yvonne. So please tell us who you are, who you're with, into the microphone so the people out on the internet can hear you. Scott?
So the Senate Bill 1008 changed the threshold, so it was at 0.1%. Now it's gone up to 0.5%, but there were other parameters around that. So for a statewide contest, it was 0.1% or 200 ballots or fewer. So because now it's 0.5%, and I just used an estimation about 3 million ballots in a statewide contest, you can do that calculation. So 0.5% of 3 million ballots, you get 15,000 ballots. That then would trigger if there was a difference between the top two vote getters in that contest.
%. I'm sure Recorder Richard or the chairman might have some, but 2% is a statistically significant number, and that is why it's in state law. It's there to make sure the tabulation machines are working correctly. This is a partnership, as most of you know, with political parties. They come in, they perform that hand count, and in 2020, the hand count was 100% accurate, or matched 100% with the machines that had tabulated those election results. Are you looking for somebody specific to answer that question? Recorder Richard, do you have anything else to add to that?
Well, I would just supplement that.
Please come to the microphone.
We also do a post-election logic and accuracy test, which is, again, feeding a stack of ballots into the machines to make sure the machines are reading. And again, the purpose of the post-election counts isn't to recount everything, but it's to make sure that the machines were tabulating the votes as intended. And so between that statistically significant test done by the political parties and the post-election logic and accuracy test, that provides a very, 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 very high degree of certainty that the machines are working as intended.
Chairman Gates, do you have anything yet?
I agree with everything else that's been said. I would add, historically, this county has done a 2% hand count audit, and there has been no discussion and there's no item before the board to do anything different.
I'm not sure if we have anything new to add on that. Ashley, we don't have any new complaints or anything else that we've forwarded. I'm not sure if the Secretary of State might have something. I know they have been handling some of those formal complaints. All right. Let's go to Jeremy, then we'll go to Bram.
Walk us through that process for how chain of custody is tracked and guaranteed,
Are there specific allegations about the chain of custody?
An allegation about 740,000 ballots that didn't have a proper chain of custody or whether that was unknown. But more than anything, I would kind of like to walk through what that process is for kind of tracking chain of custody and like how you know where those ballots are and where they've been.
Are you mailing it back or are you dropping it off?
For all of them.
You're gonna make it difficult on us. So yes. All right, Scott.
Well, Jeremy, I'll try to not keep us here for 3 or 4 hours describing that. So essentially we have very robust chain of custody throughout the entire process. So if it's dropping it off at any one of our voting locations, it's performed by bipartisan teams going out to those voting locations. They fill out chain of custody logs when they arrive on site. They're filled out by both those bipartisan teams and the inspector that's on site. There's tamper evidence seals that are logged and then placed on any of those secure transport containers, bringing them back to the elections department. Then they go through an audit once they come back to the elections department. And anytime they transfer custody from one location to the other, it's all documented. That'd be the same when it's coming back from our voting locations. So we have canvas bags that all those ballots that are voted on election day go into, again with tamper evidence seals, bipartisan teams coming back together, transferring them directly back to the elections department or going to a bipartisan team at a receiving site. As I mentioned earlier, there's sheriff's deputies on site at those to also keep them secure. So every single stage of the process is documented and we can track that ballot throughout. That's correct. And in 2020, when we went through and we looked at that paperwork, there was very, very small administrative errors, and usually it was when we had a bipartisan team going out on site. They'd fill out 3 or 4 different chain of custody logs, those early ballot transport statements, and one of the team members may have forgotten to sign the last log, right? But that did not prove that they weren't on site. They were on site. They were documented on those other forms, but very, 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 very small percentage of those signatures were missing.
Bram?
Thank you. Question for Scott and Chairman Gates. Just a number question, 2 number questions. You mentioned the percentage of early ballots you have to deal with, 15% turned in on election day.
So, Bram, yes, during the August primaries, 15% of the voters returned their early ballots on election day. So that's about 122,000 early ballots.
We know voter behavior has changed, especially in Republicans. So is there a historic comparison for that as far as turning ballots in on election day? And it looks like that's going to happen again. So it's really a large number of the current trend holds.
So in the August primary, there was about 76,000 early ballots voted on election day in the August primary. And we had in the November general election, 165,000 early ballots dropped off on election day during the November 2020 general election. So if there is a similar increase, we could be looking at somewhere between 225 to 185 early ballots dropped off on election day. And we are preparing our staff and resources for that.
Second number, can you give voters a hard deadline for when they should mail their ballot in to make sure it gets in on time? Was November 1st, was that the deadline?
November 1st is the recommended date by the U.S. Post Office that we would receive it by election day and be able to have it counted as part of this election.
Question for Chairman Gates, please. Mark Bernovich was interviewed by Jon Stewart for his Apple TV show. There was a clip of it posted on Twitter. I imagine you saw it. The Attorney General was talking about an ongoing investigation involving potential ballot fraud, 20 open investigations. Was it appropriate for him to be talking about that right now?
Well, I'm not a prosecutor. He is. He's the chief law enforcement officer for the state of Arizona, so he can determine whether or not that's appropriate. Again, we have responded to allegation after allegation. As I've said many times before, 2020 election in Maricopa County was one of the most scrutinized in the history of the world. We've been cooperative with the Attorney General's office. We're waiting for them to close that investigation. We feel like it's certainly time. They've had these materials from the Senate since September of 2021. So again, beyond that, I'm not going to comment.
Did that number, 20 pending investigations, surprise you?
I'm not sure where that's coming from. Again, I think this needs to be wrapped up. Look, and around here, we can't be distracted by that, and we're not distracted by it. This is a very important election. The eyes of the world are on Maricopa County. We're moving forward. We're making sure that every eligible voter's vote is counted and that people feel safe when they go to vote however they choose to, and that this is a safe and secure election. That's where our focus is. Thank you.
Another question back there? Okay, good.
Say somebody has dropped out of a race, but they're still on the ballot. Kind of what's the process for that on getting rid of people like that, and specifically, has Randy Kaufman officially dropped out of the race? Is that something you guys can handle, or how does that work?
So Ray Valenzuela is our other elections co-director handling early voting, and so I'll let him address that.
Well, since we are in the process, there is multi-tiered, depending on when, obviously if the ballot's been printed specifically for candidate Kaufman, then we can't remove that. So then but even at that, had we not printed the ballot, we would have needed an official withdrawal statement. We have yet to receive that, and basically it's filed with the officer in charge of elections. So at a state level, it will be with the Secretary of State official filing. At a local level, county, would be with us. We have yet to receive for candidate Kaufman an official withdrawal, so we could not even move anything forward. Let's say as Kaufman, as an example, he's printed on the ballot. If we had an official withdrawal at a certain point, we could then not report or not count those, so that it's not reflected in the canvass. But at this point, he is a regular candidate, and his votes cast would be counted until he officially withdraws.
And potentially could get elected.
Technically, potentially could get elected. He is not an officially withdrawn candidate.
Thank you, Brett. Looking around the room, anybody else have a question? Yvonne? Yeah. Scott will definitely address that.
Yeah, make Scott talk about this.
How long are we going to have it for?
So I went through the timeline. We are looking to get the results posted, those final results posted for the general election at 10 to 12 days. So that should actually afford some time off around Thanksgiving for our staff, which they're looking forward to it. As we move into December, we are working with our staff to try to get a schedule so they're not having to work for the entire month of December. But yes, we are looking for very long hours through the holiday period in elections. And then I also wanted to address the withdrawal of candidates. Once we get to the logic and accuracy test, we can no longer remove them from the results reporting. So anybody in that passed a couple weeks ago, so anybody who withdraws subsequent to that, they will be reported on results.
Sorry, what's the deadline?
The deadline for us was when we went to the logic and accuracy test. Yes.
Anybody else have a question? All right, seeing none, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys being here this week, and we'll let you know when the next press conference is. Let us know if you have any follow-up questions or anything else. You can email the command center if you have something for Megan or myself. We'll follow up with you guys.
Hey, no.